there.
Speed 85, agility 77, strength 80, 71, 85 vert.
Nice.
Hey,
That's actually pretty
Zane.
good. What's the primary defense?
Yeah.
83.
All right.
I got Ant, JR, and Jalen Green.
That's
a good
can I
deal.
shut him?
Yeah, man, I'm trying to jork it and dunk my
First one.
motherfucker.
All right. We'll never know what you were going to say, Zane. I hope it was worth it. Okay. So we left off with gross margin per square foot, and these are lowering costs. Remember, the things about retail is we have two things. We can increase profits or we can reduce costs. And we went through the cost side strategies that retailers perform in order to be able to meet their goals. So the next one is actually some old friends you're used to. And these are the demand side positioning strategies. And as I said, they're old friends. And there are 5 of them. And without further ado, let us go through them. So, bulk breaking is the essence of retailing. Whether the size of the bulk breaking that you wish to do, how much, how wide, all of that is how you write your particular structure. Interestingly, Amazon, many times I think of as a thought piece. We often used to think of, is it possible to have a retail store which is 100,000 miles wide and 1 inch deep? And so what that means is it's the endless shelf that I could basically go out and find anything that I could possibly want. Well, all of those possible permutations of breaking a bulk pretty much set what your retail strategy can be. We expect when we go in a retail place, we expect to have whatever we need right sized. I want to trip over my tail, right? Not easy when you're Dracula. Anyway, I'm not him. This kid that we've got is awesome. Anyway, so the traditional retail is you buy in large quantities and you offer the consumer exactly the quantity they want. But let me also say, relative to the store that you're buying from. And so Costco does that just a little bit. Costco does it in larger sizes. And as I said before, Costco makes no money whatsoever on the goods that they sell. They sell their goods at cost. They make only their money on subscriptions. And how they do it without violating laws, don't ask me. Dollar stores sell in even smaller quantities at very low prices, but their particular variety is much different. A Dollar General, what they will do is they will focus on what 80% of consumers want, and then they combine it with, come on, flip over, spatial convenience, all right? So remember when we talk about what are our positioning strategies when they come to the shopping goods, convenience goods should require little or no effort to be able to obtain, and therefore they're found in practically every street. This is also one of the plans that Dollar General does. And if you notice, if you think about the Dollar Generals that are here in Boone, or excuse me, not in, they're both located on the right side going out of town. And there's a purpose behind that, okay? There is. Also notice that Dollar Generals are not in towns, they're between towns. They are even building them between towns of sizes of 1,000 less. There's a big Dollar General that came up between 2 small cities in Mississippi. One's called Beaumont and the other's called Loosedale. And it's a double-decker one. And their particular group that they're nailing it, they're hitting it right on the mark, okay? Now, you can also realize when you have a certain number of locations that you don't necessarily have to only sell those particular products that are, focused on what you have. Walgreens suddenly realized they have 4,000 locations all over. What can you buy at Walgreens? Tell me. What can you buy?
Medicine,
Yeah, that's the first obvious one. Yeah, got that one. What else can you get at a Walmart?
$5 stick of gum.
There you go. Yes, exactly. The answer, what's that?
Food.
Food, yes, everything. And the realization is that if I've got these many places, then perhaps people will be willing to spend just a little bit more to get what they need instead of having to go somewhere else. And so there's a balance between spatial convenience, the customer segments that you're looking for, the changing demographics and the lifestyles, and it's this constant kind of iteration that is driving success or failure between Walgreens, CVS, and Rite Aid. They're all in this delicate dance, and yet they need each other desperately. It's the reason why two pharmacies are next to each other, because it's also convenience and it's shopping at the same time. Waiting and delivery time. We are becoming less and less forgiving when it comes to delivery times, with good reason. Because let's give the channels credit, as things got worse, it got better. And so what retailers have to do is gauge how out of stock affects each things. And if somebody can come up with an algorithm to know when the ice cream machine at McDonald's is broken, you'll win a Nobel Prize. Customers differ on their willingness to tolerate out of stock. And you need to be able to gauge those things. They are much more resistant to it, especially when the goods are higher in risk. But there are certain things that you're willing to wait for. Wait in delivery time. Product variety. Okay, so remember this, okay? Variety is the breadth of the product lines, how many different lines you have, and the assortment is the deepness, the depth. If I'm looking at condiments, I choose the word carefully, condiments, and I'm looking at the mayo and the mustard and the ketchup, the relish, all of those, that is the variety. If I'm looking at how many mustards I have, that's the depth. A place like Dollar General gets by on maybe 2 brands at the most because they're not selling variety, they're selling convenience. However, a supermarket which has over 50,000 separate items has many different ones. And even between those supermarkets, there are differences. There's a vast difference between Walmart and the store, let's say Harris Teeter or Lowe's. So I actually did this. This is the dull, boring life of a professor. I went into Walmart and I counted how many mustards there. I mean, how many different varieties of mustard. And they had 17. And so I went to Harris Teeter and counted the different varieties and sizes, and there were 72. And so it gives you an idea. You know, Walmart focuses on the most popular ones, but their ideas about what they stock are different from a full service, spit it out, Dave, supermarket, because ultimately what you have is a changeover in price. What is the right assortment? The right assortment depends on your particular company's mission statement. Everything runs from the mission statement. I hope when if those of you that are marketing majors, I think you all are, and supply chain people, get to your capstone course in strategic marketing, you must realize is that every goal starts originally with the mission of the company. So buyers, I actually had a buyer come in 2 years ago from Dollar General, and he was brilliant. And he talked about using, which one was it? Gimros as the way that they did their particular work. Because the buyers themselves, especially when they buy in lots, can actually generate profits just from buying goods at the right moment. They're brokers in many ways. They do the exact same thing as commodity people. And many times buyers will get bonuses based upon the margins that they can provide. And so how they go about and do it, it's a marvelous dance. One day I hope to get him back again. I think he started something else, but it was a really interesting conversation. Customer service, if my company is just like another company that provides the same goods, I can still beat my competition if I increase service. Service is where I can separate myself from my competitors. But once again, the service supplied has to be the service demanded. I just can't ask for it. What I have to do is know my customers and know that I'll provide that service. Now, the worst part about it is sales, general, administrative, SG&A. Those expenses are there regardless of whether I make one thing, whether I sell one thing. Those are costs that I just simply entail and I can't do anything about it. Just realize that retailing is probably the most labor intensive of all of the industries that are out there. And then I'm really big on giving the customers the ability to do things on their own. And that's what the magic of the omnichannel is. I still like if consumers consider the service itself worthy. I would like to be able to provide for them if I can. Doesn't always happen. Okay, so we have the retail positioning strategies for cost. And then we have the retail strategies to generate profit. But now we're going to talk about the eclectic mix in the middle. And so ultimately what there is what's known as a taxonomy of positioning strategies that happen all across the way. Okay, so there are different ones. You have different retail outlets. They sell the same physical merchandise, but they position themselves not as general stores, but as specialties. And so an example is Best Buy is a category killer. They, in essence, stand alone in electronics, and they tend to be a signature brand. Academy is another example as well. And those kind of fight against the will. I mean, to think about it, that you're really only in a specialty store. But what they do is with a deep assortment, you make trade-offs with the consumers, such as allowing the consumer to carry out the goods. So Tweeter actually was bought by Best Buy, actually as competition for themselves. They ran it for a couple of weeks, a couple of years, and then they absorbed it within the structure of Best Buy. Why? They did that basically to create their own competition, to be able to try to make themselves better than they were. Works for a while. Aldi, as I've said before, bought Winn-Dixie. I'm not quite sure how long that model is going to last. We'll see, we'll see. We are in a world of multi-channel strategies. And these multi-channel strategies create a lot of drift and what we call channel pollution. But we're living in a time where we accept those things. There are many corporations that started as internet channels only. Amazon is one. Amazon can't seem to get out of their way. They keep talking about wanting to do a retail channel. They did, oh gosh, what was it? The food store. I can't remember it. Anyway, they bought a something Earth, I forgot. Anyway, they do specialty foods, miserable get together. The cultures clash pretty bad. Amazon is talking about buying a couple of retail outlets, and they can still consider, but I don't know if they're natural for that. The internet retail is totally location, no consideration whatsoever. Some of them start as bricks and mortar. Not always. Some of them start as internet and move in the opposite direction. The internet channels are just those that are on the internet. Makes sense. Direct selling channel is basically face-to-face personal selling. You have what are called distributors. When you think of the direct selling channel, think of Avon as one of those. Pampered Chef was another. I actually did Pampered Chef for about a year. It was interesting. You are basically a salesperson. You pay a small franchise fee, and you are able basically to give parties in which you sell those goods. That's the most common one we know. And then finally, hybrid channels, which are the vast majority, are providing or combining bricks and mortar with online selling. And of course, free riding is always a natural byproduct. And this is where you start to see the channel conflict, especially when it comes from having a large structure and a traditional channel environment. So I talked about Callaway clubs the last time, and that was real. And so you're going to naturally have that. And remember that when you do dual distribution, your claim for neutrality is no longer valid. So I talked about Avon. It was traditionally, originally, the stay-at-home mom. They yielded, Avon started selling online. But what Avon did was, to avoid too much conflict, they would allow the individuals who bought the goods online would go to one of their local individuals, and they would deliver and sell up. And so Avon is an example of the direct selling channel. So what has happened in the future, and what is the expectation of where retailing is going? Even though retailing, if you want to say, is the traditional brick store is lesser, it is still going strong. So, what has been the number one trend in the last 2 decades, especially with the internet, is that competition, quite simply, is based on price, especially with the omni-channel's ability for you to be able to search and find the right price at the right time. What has happened is that prices have pretty much platformed. Retailers have little choice but to pass down the increases down further. And so what we have is a vicious cycle. The retailers are constantly trying to improve their productivity, but here's the thing is that a lot of the power is in the retailers themselves, because the mass merchandisers can emphasize generating huge sales volumes, And because they generate huge sales volumes, they can make demands on the producers. In 1996, in the Harvard Business Review, there was an article that was written that said power has shifted from the manufacturers to the retailers, perhaps forever. And it was the domination of one particular retail outlet that basically changed everything. And that retail outlet is, anyone, would you tell me? The big retail outlet in 1996 would have been still big, huge.
Walmart.
Thank you, Walmart. Walmart has 4.5 million employees all over the world. They're the second largest employer in the United States, next to the United States itself. They have 5,500 different outlets. They, in essence, fundamentally changed the entire ground. And so domination will continue to be with the retailers, even in the area that we have. The difficulty now is, of course, is we're shaking out, and some of the retailers that peaked, I'm afraid, have had difficulty. So, as you have increased pressures, you have increased pressures on buyers. Because there are so many alternates that retailers have for manufacturers, especially now that it's around the world, basically what happens is sellers have these difficulties of getting their goods on the shelves, and so they started this bargain with Faust. Now that we're at Halloween, let's talk about bargaining with the devil. Is they came up with promotion allowances, and they've never been the same. Because once you offered the retailers something as an inducement, naturally what happens is it's the expectation now. You're going to have to pay. And so let's talk about those. Forward buying means that you, by contract, buy into the future. And so instead of just 2,000, I'm going to order 20,000. So it means that where do you charge 20,000 items if you only grab 2 of them now? It creates its own unique accounting issues. And so the continuous replenishment program is what Walmart came up with. And that is where whatever your good is, if it hits a certain minimum within Walmart's system, it automatically reorders and replenishes. Now the problem, well, I don't know if this is a problem, it's just a basic, is what will happen is they will do what's called diverting. And so if they're doing a special on the East Coast and they're trying to induce East Coast buyers, if they have West Coast plants, they will buy in bulk at reduced prices on the East Coast and they'll ship them to the West Coast. And that's what diverting is. It can also happen that way when you're trying to buy goods that aren't necessarily available in your given area. So, where is the #1 traveled location in a supermarket? Okay, let me kind of do it like this, all right? Okay, let's say these are drinks. This is cereal. And let's say this is chips, okay? And this is an average supermarket, and these are average aisles. What locations in the aisles do the most travel? It's the islands. People see the islands more than they see any location in the supermarket. They pass them more frequently than anything else. A slotting and allowance says that the price for being on this shelf is less than the price of being on that one, okay? And so that's what a slotting allowance is. It's a premium price that you pay in order to be at a particular place. On the cereal aisle, there's a premium that is paid for being from 5 to 6. I can't remember what's the exact, but right at eye level. And because there's less space on shelf rather than more, slotting and out allowances have grown. And of course, the other thing about a supermarket is when your margins are only 2%, you're trying to find any way to make money. Now, the difficulty if you're a small manufacturer is that you don't have reasonable access to those shelf space. And there's something else that we'll talk about called the failure fee, that if you have to make the great leap, you'll try. This is what a failure fee is. So I'm a small manufacturer. I've got I really want to get out there. I just simply cannot pay the slotting allowance. But what I do is, once again, Faust bargains with the devil, and I come up with a new plan. I say, if my product does not meet a minimum sales target within 3 months, you can charge me a failure fee, a dollar amount per unit. Who knows, a flat rate. You don't pay them up front. So even if you're a small manufacturer, you can try to make it. The difficulty is it's a very moral hazard, because what it means is that you bank money on the failure of one of your particular clients, and that's not really a good thing. You shouldn't be cheering for failure, especially when it comes to one of your clients. You know, the product may not fail because it's an inferior product, but I just don't care. And I need that particular $5,000 to be able to make book next month. And so that's the reason why I do it. And so, yeah, it's a real moral hazard. You want to bank on success. So, speaking of, once again, the devil, private branding, and of course, Aldi is the big one that we think about. But there are others. Every corporation has private branding. Walmart has Sam's Choice. They are money-saving alternatives. They tend to be generic in nature. So what that means is that there would be a can of green peas. That would be an example. What is the advantage? A can of Libby's, the store will make 2% on. A private store brand, they'll make 30%. That's the advantage. And that's what makes an Aldi so strong. And Aldi can handle some rough times because they're making so much money on their private label brands. I think 85% of the things that they sell are brands. They are huge in Europe. They have been here, but certainly not to the level that they have. And they do it quite well. And then finally, globalization is real in the world, even more so than wholesaling. Retailing does span the globe. But the difficulty comes down, especially between where can you build and if you understand the culture in which you're trying to build in. Walmart has been wildly successful in Central and South America. They became successful in Asia because they adapted to the Asian market. Still can't beat it in Korea. I've been to the Korean Walmart. It's pretty incredible. And in Europe, they just laid an egg. They couldn't do it. The other reasons is quite simply finding quality real estate and understanding the logistics that it takes to operate in a given country. Now, unfortunately, also sometimes regulations on each side of the border can be somewhat different. And you might do something that is illegal in the US that may be legal somewhere else. The best thing to do with this is have an international buyer, someone who can manage these things for you, which is not a bad thing, because once again, specialists are efficient. And so more specialists, greater efficiency. Now, what happens with retailers is it starts a virtuous cycle. You benefit from the greater economies of scale. The bigger get bigger, all these getting bigger. Walmart, I think, has grown to its extent. And international competition is a given rather than an exception. And also what happens with international competition is that it will eat into local outlets. That is a natural thing. And that's why, unfortunately, Big Lots is going out. Okay, that happens. And we're done with this. So if you got time tonight, you know, when you're doing the Boon Boo, come on by, watch the show. If you can't go, if you pay a ticket, you feed a family. So please have a great Halloween, and I'll see you on Tuesday. Your grades will be posted this weekend. Bye.
Integration papers.